Did the cosmos suddenly explode into existence from nothing, by nothing, and for no apparent reason? Or were the words of Moses true? For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Exodus chapter 20 verse 11. Do we find evidence for a purposeless, self-existing universe? Or does the very existence of the cosmos point to a creator? Join Midwest Christian Outreach Inc. in J. Hall, MS, as we explore creation, the Bible, and science.
Creation, the Bible, and science. So, Jay, are you under the misguided delusion that the Bible is not contradictory to or overturned by science? You got to turn your mic on now. Now that you've had their practice run, turn your mic on.
Okay, there we go. My mistake. Yeah, I believe the Bible's true, and all of it covers the history, the science, the spiritual truth. So, it talks about God sits above the circle of the earth, and the earth hangs on nothing, and things like that. It describes the water cycle. The clouds bring down rain. The rain goes in the rivers go into the ocean, and the oceans evaporate, and you have that cycle going on and on. The life of the flesh is in the blood. You could go on and on like that. But I think that we can also break it down in terms of where it conflicts with evolution or where it seems to imply a young earth.
Right. So it doesn't conflict with science, although science may conflict with the Bible. That's right. And you have to realize science changes. It doesn't give us absolute truth. We can think through things. So the Bible warns us against vain philosophy. But I think if we think philosophically, especially as a Christian, we can think carefully, and we can come up with the right answers. So God wants us to love us with our mind. So that's part of what we do. But everything has to be based on Scripture. Right. Absolutely. So before we turn over the PowerPoint for Jay to rip away at what he's going to do tonight, does anyone have any questions or comments before we get that far into it?
Well, before we do get started, I wanted to mention something about my book, Yes, Young Earth Science. And the radiometric chapter is actually chapter 2. And what I'm going to do is anybody that sends
Hold
that
up again.
It's just called Radiometric Dating, Get a Half-Life. Tried to be funny with it. And I try to follow your example in terms of add a little bit of humor.
Can you show the front?
I have lots of charts and illustrations. This represents errors in radiometric dating as you get older dates for various isotopes. It's 23 pages and 61 footnotes. So my email's at the end, hallofmath@yahoo.com. So just send me an email, and I will send you a free copy of that chapter, all 23 pages at no cost.
Oh, that's such a deal as that, free.
I know.
The missionary motto: if it's free, it's for me.
There you go. What was the front of the book look like?
Just the Yes, Young Earth Science. This is my previous book. And my other book, Is a Young Earth Possible, does have some evidence for a young Earth, but this is the one where I actually provide my extended critique of radiometric dating is in this book.
Okay. Cool.
Okay.
I might just stick you up on that.
And why? Oh, I see what I did wrong. Here we go. That's fixed.
So, again, I don't think there's polar bears. It's supposed to be like in England. It says, my dear, how old is the early Earth? But I saw some illustrations, and I thought that was kind of neat. So this is representative. You can go to a whole bunch of places. Maybe you've seen like on the news where they put a whole bunch of pictures of different channels, and they're giving an announcement. Oh, the economy looks bad, but inflation isn't all that terrible. And they almost say the exact same words. So this statement right here is representative of what you'll see over and over and over again. Today, the scientific community unanimously agrees that the question of Earth's age has been resolved. Based on radiometric dating of rocks that formed on Earth since its beginning and of meteorites, that's a strong argument. But I'll pause there to say a lot of the meteorites have been shown that, say, the lead, which more lead means it's older, actually were original in the meteorites. And that's been shown for many decades, but usually the evolutionists ignore that. We estimate that the Earth has existed for about 4.54 billion years. This vast time span provides ample time for the occurrence of the evolutionary processes that transformed into a planet brimming with life. Well, again, we would question that. I'm just saying this is representative of what you'll see over and over and over again. This basic statement, basically, like everybody believes it, don't question it.
Yeah. Well, that part about the vast time spent provides ample time, that is correct, because that's what they need to have in order to make it happen, their point of view.
Right. And it doesn't work.
No, but
because
they need
Murray Eden, in a famous paper called Mathematical Challenges to Neo-Darwinism, used computers of his day to calculate what are the odds that starting with matter, energy, time, and chance in any acceptable framework for the age of the Earth, which would include 4.5 billion years, what are the odds that life could have arisen purely by chance in that time? And the computer's answer was 0.
Can't argue with the math.
Yeah, exactly.
So even if the Earth were that old, it wouldn't help the evolutionists.
Right. No matter which way you slice it.
So I have a question, which I had included in kind of the description of what we're doing tonight. And I wanted to bounce this off for you, Jay. I didn't get to talk to you ahead of time, so we're doing this live and on the air, and you could prove me a total idiot, which is oftentimes pretty easy anyway. As I was kind of looking around, I remembered something I had read a little while back that said that in 1986, when Mount Helens erupted, new rock was formed, which, when tested in 1996, in other words, 10 years later, yielded a radiometric dating of 350,000 years. This was clearly inaccurate since the rock had been observed to be only 10 years old. Similarly, rock formed in 1954 at Mount something in New Zealand was less than 50 years old and radiometric dated at 3.5 million. Even as in our own Grand Canyon, rock located at the rim, which was formed by a recent lava flow dated to 1.143 billion years. Okay. Are those claims true that happened? And how do they account for that?
Well, there's several different possibilities. You have more of the parent element or more of the daughter element, or some of the parent element gets lost. Things can happen as water flows through the rocks. They try to check for that. But a lot of that would be, I would say that the dates are kind of consistent with the usual assumptions. It's just that I, along with other creationists, would say that in the past, the radiometric dates have increased. But because we're dating things of known historical events, and even some of the lava flows in the Grand Canyon, some Native American accounts seem to match up to those kind of events. So that obviously wouldn't be millions of years ago. So there's several reasons why those dates happen. But one method will give one date, another method will give a different date, and also the dates when we have a known event, they don't match up. And even for radiocarbon dating, once you go so far back, they don't match up what we know from recognized ancient history.
Okay, that's helpful. So it can be a helpful means, but it isn't like the gold standard of dating.
Not at all. I would say that the best we have, because we can match it to, say, George Washington. I had the privilege to visit Mount Vernon as a kid. I grew up in Northern Virginia. So that chair right there, you have it dated by radiocarbon. It's probably going to be fairly close. But basically past around 400 BC, it goes way out. And for a certain period of time, I forget what it was, maybe it's 400 BC to 700 BC, say roughly, because of things in the atmosphere and changes that were going on. All the dates are almost mainline, which again, you have to explain it through changes in the atmosphere, and radiocarbon in the atmosphere doesn't stay constant. But that's the only one where we compare it to things that we actually know, and even that one goes way off the rails once you go further back.
So does it or does it not account for catastrophism? Or
that's where you look at the rocks, and then Derek Ager that I mentioned before, who wrote The New Catastrophism, a mainstream geologist. There's a certain bed where it has the coiled shells like nautiloids, the ammonites, and they're close together, but the whole bed that they're in clearly was formed at one time. Whereas the radiometric dates seem to give different numbers. So he says, I'm going to go with what the rocks are telling me, which means he's contradicting what the radiometric dates say. So those two things can definitely work together. And coalified wood has been used with radiocarbon, and when wood gets squashed, you have more pressure, and you also have to add, I think, clay heat and pressure with a wood will create coal. And so based on those kind of radiometric dates, it implied that it happened fairly fast for mainstream geologists, that is.
Okay.
Right.
I'd like to say I didn't mean to distract you, but obviously I did, because I did.
It was accomplished.
Yeah. All right. So next slide.
Yes, please. Okay, so you may have heard that Kamala really likes Venn diagrams, so I tried to keep it simple. Not 3 circles, just 2. So you basically have, what about the age of the Earth? It's either finite or infinite. Okay, we got that. Within the finite category, what are our choices? Basically, of course, there could be a whole bunch, but basically, in terms of the prominent ones, you have thousands or billions. Notice the circles do not overlap. If it's thousands, it can be billions. If it's billions, it can be thousands. So I'm arguing for an age of the Earth that is just thousands of years old.
Right.
Okay. Now, I am definitely going to interrupt here for something unrelated. Well, not directly related to this, perhaps. And that is a comment here. I don't know, Don, if you want to tackle this, I can certainly tackle it. The claim is by Stupidity Index that, quote, believers can never tell us how faith is not pretending, scripture is not fiction, and how they are not audacious liars. Anyone care to jump in on that in a kind way to say, here's why we disagree?
Well, whoever said that certainly has not been paying attention to many believers who have given strong rebuttals to all 3 of those claims. Even a unbelieving biblical scholar like Bart Ehrman would not say simply that scripture is fiction.
Right.
I mean, to say that scripture doesn't have a strong historical element, the statement is just so ignorant. You can't refute it because it's too ignorant to refute. Because even knowledgeable skeptics who reject Christianity are too knowledgeable to say things like that.
Well, they are, because if we break it down, to say that faith is not pretending is on its face not even a well thought out statement or accusation. It could be that believers are wrong in what they believe.
Right.
They could believe that they have the what they believe is the evidence understood incorrectly, but that is clearly not the same thing as pretending. So we have a false accusation to begin with.
Right.
Scripture is not fiction. As you point out, even Bart Ehrman doesn't go that far. He knows what was written. He knows approximately when it was written. We can take issue with the way he interprets it, and we've written on that exact topic actually, and he didn't really bother to respond, which I found interesting. But so it isn't fiction. You may not understand the stories in it, but that doesn't mean they're fictional stories. Right. And how we are not audacious liars assumes his previous statements are true and that we're lying to get out of it. Instead, we're saying
it also assumes that he has the kind of insight into our minds that is simply not available to him. I mean, we might be deluded,
Possibility, right?
but to say that no Christian sincerely believes what they're saying, the statement is we're all liars, meaning we know it's not true and we say it anyway.
Right.
Now, yeah, you might think, and you might make a case that we're wrong or that we're deluded, but to put the statement that way is simply to make a claim to knowledge that is simply not available to you.
Right.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Williams. And back to our little pal here. Next slide.
There we go. So it brings up the question, let's say we don't have radiometric dating. How in the world do we date the Earth? Well, keep in mind, before catastrophism became more acceptable, even within mainstream geology, like a big rock hit the Earth and that's what killed the dinosaurs. Before all those kind of things happened, it's basically, here's a bunch of rock sediments. How long did it take to form? So Charles Walcott, who discovered the Burgess Shale, that has a lot of the simpler and strange creatures, like at the beginning of the Cambrian. That's what that is. He estimated that the time since the Cambrian was 27.6 million years ago. Fairly accurate. He used sedimentation rates to get that number. And then in 1883, notice that's after Darwin's Origin of the Species in 1859, Alexander Winchell, former state geologist of Michigan, estimated the age of the Earth at 3 million years. Now, 3 million years, even if someone said you had billions, evolution isn't going to work. But definitely 3 million years, there's no way possible you can get, from worms to dinosaurs to mammals to people. That just isn't going to work. And then former president of the Geological Society of London, Andrew Ramsay, held that the Earth was 10 billion years, not
Oh my gosh.
but the Earth itself. Well, that maybe he needed more time for evolution. I'm not sure. And then that was AI giving us an expiration date. Of course, some of the climate extremists have said similar things, and also that the Earth maybe wouldn't exist, but that would not be suitable for human habitation in the not too distant future.
Boy, we seem to hear a lot of that now. Like it's going to end in like 12 years or something.
Something like that. And that was what?
All right.
5 years ago?
So here is some of the basic assumptions that each of these can be questioned to varying degrees. And that's why a lot of the philosophers of science, they admit you don't really have a very, very solid basis for the whole radiometric scheme, because we can't go back in the past to make sure the radioactive decay rate was the same or the initial conditions. So say the famous one, uranium turns into lead by a process, several steps. And then so the more lead you have, that means there was more time for that radiometric decay. One thing turns into another, kind of like the idea of lead turning into gold or something, but it takes time. So the daughter element would be the lead, the parent element would be the uranium. One turns into the other. So the more daughter element you have over time. And so, but do we know what it started out with? Maybe there was some lead there at the beginning. That's a question. Number two, is the system closed? That is something leaching out? That's very famous with the potassium argon method. The argon's light, so it can escape. So it seems like there's very little argon, which would imply, well, that rock must be really old, because we only have, or it can change. It can change the other way, I was thinking. But anyway, the parent isotope can change. It's just the different forms as you lose the particles, the alpha particles and the beta particles. And so we don't know if it's necessarily, think of an hourglass. Is sand putting into it at the top, and is it leaking at the bottom? Basically, that's the idea. That a lot of times that's hard to prove. And then the third thing is the constant decay rate. Again, that's the formula, but the main point is there's lots of evidence that the decay rate changes over time. And the chart that I mentioned out of my book, basically the geochronologists and those that like the physicists, they often work with slightly different decay rates, you think, well, isn't it agreed upon? Isn't it the same? No. So as you get an older and older rock, those error numbers split up, and they get more divergent. And no contamination. So similar to point number 2, did something get added from the parent, or did something get taken away? And one key thing, water at very, very rapid rates can have an extreme change on the radioactive decay rate. So that's one example. We can go to the next. Okay, now don't be intimidated by this. This is the full step-by-step process from uranium-235 to lead-207. Who has any lead in their house? Anybody?
Any lead?
So I was I do some construction. I help out. I can't build a house or anything. I'm more of a helper. But we pulled out this thing. It kind of looked like a cylinder with an open top. The top part was brass. So I thought, wow, I got all this brass. I can take it to the recycling and get a buck. But the bottom part was lead, and I didn't attempt to like separate the two. But I didn't even recognize that. Wow, why is this thing so heavy? I thought it was going to cash in pretty good. But if we can go back to that slide.
We can.
Yeah. So think of this as a downtown road map. A lot of downtowns have one-way streets. So think of all these as one-way streets. So you tell your taxi driver, get from here to there. Well, notice there's several ways to do it. They could take the first left and go straight for a while, and take the third right, rather, and so forth and so on. But ultimately, step by step, we're eventually going to get to the lead. It's just so that you follow those one-way streets, then that's kind of how it's processed. And it depends on alpha decay, alpha particles being lost, and beta decay, beta particles during loss, and of course over time. So you can take any of these two, a parent, say uranium and thorium, a parent element and a daughter element, and you check those ratios, and you can use that, assuming that constant decay rate, as a method of dating. So the full thing to get the billions of years is start with uranium and get the lead, but you could do it with any two of those, just so you have a parent and a daughter along that chain. And, you may wonder about the gamma rays. I know they'll kill you, but that's that doesn't really relate to the radioactive decay, just the alpha and the beta.
Or you can become the Hulk.
That's right, and we can and there's many different methods. The rubidium, strontium, like I said, potassium argon. Now the potassium argon method, because things can be added or subtracted, it's well regarded that it has serious problems, and almost like they just kind of fit the dates to what the geologists are looking for. But some of the other ones require a little more careful scrutiny. We can go to the next.
Yep.
Okay. Now, John Jolly, if you look him up, I don't think he has. I think he usually has almost like a comb mustache, way bigger than mine, and he's clean shaven on the chin. So AI, I don't know. It's AI. Anyway, so apparently he said extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So he was actually a pioneer in radiation therapy. He died in 1933 using X-rays and radium to help with cancer patients. Now, he rejected radiometric dating. He was one of the pioneers, but he noticed there's one wild date, another wild date. It's the same rock. They're totally way consistent. And even before the creationists, he proposed rapid radiometric decay in the past, which is one way to explain how could one possibly be different than the other. And I would agree with that as well. And so he had a method that you look at the salt going into the sea. And again, that changes. There's differences rates of how it goes into the sea, and some processes take it out of the sea, and so forth. But even considering all that, his range was from 80 million to 100 million. And so AI just took the average of 90 million. But that is actually still a valid method. And I think in my links at the end, I refer to a creationist paper on that, and we can go to the next. All right. So, this is it here. Based on salt in the oceans, John Jolly dated the sea from 80 million to 100 million. So the more salt goes into the sea, some of it does leave, but it accumulates. So it's one possible way to date the ocean. More salt is entering than leaving, starting with fresh water And again, that's an assumption. Maybe the original ocean had some salt in it, just not that much. But starting with freshwater, how long would it take for the oceans to become as salty as they are? Creation scientists Steve Austin and Russell Humphreys, using the most conservative numbers available, gave an absolute upper limit of 62 million years. So shorter than John Jolly's estimate, because we have more data today compared to 1933. So actually taking in all those possible variations that have to do with salt in the ocean, those coming in and those going out, they came up with 62 million is like a maximum number. Not that they're claiming the ocean is actually that old.
Right.
Okay. Now, this is my conspiracy theory. I don't know if any of y'all are big on that sort of thing.
Sure, why not?
I think there's a lot to it. Again, I wouldn't be dogmatic about it, but it is quite interesting. So in 1921, a meeting of the British Association for the Advancement of Science, that's pretty much one of the oldest science organizations, period. There was no consensus on radiometric dating and an Earth that's billions of years old. Again, I showed you a little bit that there was a wide range. Some even saying, just a matter of millions of years old, and some to 10 billion. So wide range. So what's going to settle this issue? William J. Salas of the University of Oxford held to Earth of no older than 100 million years. So similar to Jolly's estimate. In 1926, a committee of the National Research Council. So today, our big thing is the National Science Foundation, and I tried to get some information from them about how they, with like a FOIA request about how they thought about the young Earth, but I pretty much wasn't able to come up with much, but I attempted it. But it had kind of the same, back then, the same kind of a reputation like, say, the National Science Foundation would today. So the National Research Council concluded that radiometric dating was the only reliable method to date rocks. Now, who was the big push on that? AH for Arthur Holmes there, who led the campaign for radiometric dating, and he wrote 70% of the code. So what am I saying? I'm sure you've heard that thing from Dan Brown and the Da Vinci Code. Oh, yeah, 325, Council of Nicaea. Yeah, they voted, and now we know what's in the Bible. And they rejected all those Gnostic books, not a bit of truth in it. So actually, from a vote, radiometric dating got from home plate all the way around and made a home run. And it's interesting that it kind of was that way. But now, because of Ike's warning about the military-industrial complex, you could add education, you could add science. The money goes in, you have to follow the accepted plan, or you don't get the money. And it's just an endless circle. Yep. So today, if you don't follow the older path, you won't get funding to do the research to say, yes, there is evidence for young Earth. So
follow the money.
It did get in through the front door through a vote.
Follow the money, I think.
So we have seen it happen in other areas. We saw it happen with COVID, for example.
There you go.
If you weren't in on the game, you didn't get to play, you didn't get the funding, and you may lose your license.
Right.
And now that's all over, they're going, well, maybe we made a mistake there. A little too late.
Yes.
We had the same thing with climate change. Some of the most knowledgeable on whether there is or is not climate change lost their positions because they didn't agree with the narrative that some were pushing for. And so now that is beginning to change. So you got to be careful who you listen to.
Yeah, it's a cycle. Yep. Next.
Oh, I guess I should put it on so you could see it. So we see it. I mean, I was enjoying reading it here.
I know. I saw you.
Okay, so this is, of course, a graphic for which came first, the chicken or the egg. Who says the chicken?
Probably, yeah.
Okay, anybody for the egg? Okay, not too many votes for that. Well, and when God made the creatures, he created the birds and the sea creatures on day 4, so they were fully formed and functional, so it really would be the chicken. So let's look at this. Charles Lyell, he was one of the influential geologists to push the uniformitarian things. Everything happened just slowly, and so accumulated over millions of years. He estimated that the beginning of the Cenozoic was 80 million years ago. The current estimate is 65.5 million, fairly in the same ballpark. Could Lyell's number have influenced future dating of the Cenozoic? That is, the old Earth dating came first, and the absolute, quote-unquote, dating came later. Charles Schuchert pointed out that the age of the Cambrian was nailed down before the advent of radiometric dating. Reid in 1893 was the first to calculate the age of the Earth since the beginning of the Cambrian on the basis of the amount of limestone getting an age of 600 million years, a nice round number. Reid's figures therefore show a rather remarkable agreement with what radioactivity teaches us now. So again, just throwing it out there, it's kind of an interesting coincidence. But if we could go to the next. All right. Now, Arthur Holmes dated the beginning of the Cambrian, and the most famous creature for the Cambrian is a trilobite. You know, it kind of looks like a roly-poly, lived in the ocean. And he dated it at 600 million using radiometric dating methods, millions of years ago. You can find the same date in older geology textbooks. I have some of those, and it says 600 million. The current date, like you go to the International Geological Geochronology, you know, quote unquote, the standard, it's at 538.8 millions of years ago. But what's 60 million years among friends? So it was 600 million for some time. It got a little bit closer to where we are now. And then that was finally the date that was agreed on now. And is it going to change in the future? Who knows? But I thought that was a pretty good difference from 600 million using radiometric dating. But of course, we've improved the methods. Again, I understand that argument. And now we're to roughly about 540 million years ago. All right. Now, this is exactly, Don, what you were talking about. You get all these weird answers depending on what kind of, and this is exactly the same formation you were talking about. And that it not only gives dates that are too old, and like I say, there are records of some Native American accounts of volcanic activity there that would almost make them quite young. But the different methods in the isochron is a way to kind of make a correction based on what you know about the rock that can help correct the assumptions about the initial conditions. So it's kind of a correction method. Again, there's issues with that, but that's what the isochron method is intended to do. So this Cardenas basalt is in the Grand Canyon. The little red dot there is the Grand Canyon Village. I think that's if you're a visitor, you always go to that spot. And this is a diagram of the whole thing. And then those little red dots there are the Cardenas basalt. It's a volcanic thing that comes out of the volcano, and then lava flows and then it hardens. Whereas, say, granite, you know, there's these molten things under the earth, and then eventually they cool down. That's a different type of volcanic rock, if you want to put it that way. So they were dated at different ages: 516 million by the potassium argon, 1.1 billion by the rubidium strontium, and the 1.6 almost by the samarium neodymium. Again, any parent element and any daughter element where radiometric is involved, then you can use that as a potential dating method based on the current known radiometric rate, the decay rate. But like I say, there's evidence for various isotopes where that definitely is not constant, which is an issue.
Mm-hmm.
All right, here's a philosopher of science who I greatly admire. He's not a creationist, he's just honest. So in a different quote, he stated, again, you know, we can't measure the decay rate in the past, 1,000 years ago or 1,000,000 years ago. So it's based on a really wiki assumption, the whole thing is. Mm-hmm. So this book is really good. Our next topic is about the genesis kinds of biological essentialism. He's kind of touched on that topic as well. I have this book, I've read it. It's his philosophy of science textbook. I really love that graphic. Kind of open up the earth and lay down and take a nap. That's cute. But his name is Alex Bird. He's from the University of Bristol, and he talks about the double-blind procedure. Quote, neither the patient nor the clinician knows whether the patient is receiving the treatment. There's a little pill. So it's a little red pill or whatever it happens to be. And the other one is just the sugar pill, but it's also coded red. You can't tell the difference from one or the other. If I'm the official, I'm the medical person, I give you the medicine, I don't know which one is which. And you receiving it, this one looks red, that one looks red. You don't know which is which. So that's what's called the double-blind method.
Yes.
This is often done in conjunction with the use of a placebo, say a sugar pill. And you might feel better because sometimes your mind plays a trick on, wow, I feel so much better. I don't have that ache in my back anymore. You know, your mind plays tricks like that, which is a harmless substitute equivalent to the appearance of the treatment. So this is the question. Why do we not use double-blind methods when it comes to radiometric dating? That's the question.
Mm-hmm.
What is the age of your sample? You tell me.
Right.
I thought you were supposed to tell me. Which way is it? And we can go to the next slide. So I wanted to give you two examples. And it's easier to get with radiometric dating versus some of the other dates and the other dating methods. But this is interesting. So radiometric dating with carbon-14 is very important because that is something we can match to known dates. It's just that once you go farther back, the dates do get wonky. But like I said, George Washington would probably be pretty close to accurate. So notice it says something. This is the form you have to fill out in Waikato University, and it says, what is the estimated age range, and why do you think it's that? Maybe it's between two other layers, and you kind of have an idea of that. But it's asking you to give an estimated age. Well, that's not double blind, not at all. We can look at the next one. Any UC Irvine fans? UC Irvine? No? Okay. So that's a mascot. What is it, an anteater? Anyway.
Looks like.
But yeah, that could be kind of dangerous to meet on the football field, I guess.
True.
So right there, highlighted in yellow, tell me, is this modern? Like, say, was it George Washington? Is this still old, but it's less than 10,000 years old? Or is it between 10 and 40,000 years old? Or is this really super old, like maybe a dinosaur bone? It's over 40,000. So you got to figure out which box you're going to put it in. But again, that's not double blind, is it?
No.
So we can go to the next.
Well, if you had two blind people looking at it,
that would be it. That would be it. Where's Ray Charles when you need him?
Well, we have a friend named Andre who's blind.
So this new scientist cover does not match the comment. I just thought it looked cool. It's got a skull and then somebody like a caveman walking behind him, how he became human. And then it goes back to 2020 because it's got the coronavirus article on there. We were just talking about that. But anyway, in 2009, that same journal, New Scientist, reported that Brookhaven National Laboratory's physicist David Alberger found that the nuclear decay rate of silicon-32 changed with the seasons. In addition, Purdue physicist Ephraim Fishback discovered that nuclear decay rate sped up during the winter. So in other words, somehow, some way, could the sun have an effect on the nuclear decay rates? Again, I'm bringing two examples to kind of verify that. I think there's something to it. Again, any kind of variation, especially the ardent evolutionists try to just throw it out. Oh, there's something wrong. That can't be it. Rather than say, well, let us try it. Let us try to measure it. Let's just try to verify it. Or to show that, well, we did it. We tried to measure it and we couldn't, when we did it. We can go to the next. Okay. Now, another way to argue this is there's certain evidences of various kinds, like say there's evidence for Noah's flood and the many flood traditions. Well, if that's true, that would imply that we basically have most of the rocks from Noah's flood, the result of that. And so if that questions the whole scheme of things, well, then the next step would be, well, maybe the radiometric dating methods aren't quite right. Another way is out of place artifacts. Again, that's kind of controversial. There's a famous bell and coal that I got to see up close and personal. I don't know where it is now. And there's differences like that. Even if you did say it was, say, post-flood, then it would show that coal doesn't take that long to form, which it doesn't. You can make it in the lab. Heat and pressure, and I think you have to add clay, and you pretty much
got it. Yeah.
But these are interesting nonetheless. Some stone tools were discovered in Ontario that geologists were too old to be of human origin. This is what happened. The site discoverer was hounded from his civil service position into prolonged unemployment. Publication outlets were cut off. The evidence was misrepresented by several prominent authors among the scientific establishment. Artifacts vanished. into storage bins of the National Museum of Canada, and for refusing to fire the discoverer, the director of the National Museum, who had proposed having a monograph on the site published, was himself fired and driven into exile. And this is a cool book for all you Lutherans out there. In Search of the Genesis World, Eric von Fang, and it's from Concordia, and there's the reference. So those kinds of things, again, it's like a one thing you discover, and other people might run it into things too, but often it's ignored, and those people that point to them or bring them up are often persecuted. Okay, and here's an interesting example, same book, about camels. A camel skull was found in Utah, dated at 500,000 years, and yet flesh was still sticking to the bone. Bacteria and other things, eat up things like that. That's kind of hard to believe, unless, of course, the dating method is right. In 1981 in Mexico, a camel pelvis and human remains were found together along with sophisticated stone tools. Fish and track dating, it's another radiometric method. It'd take a while to explain that. But they gave an age of 250,000 years, a quarter of a million. Again, based on the tools that were there and everything, it didn't quite fit. And now camels were brought to the West, I think, sometime during the 1800s. It just, the date just doesn't quite add up.
Right. Doesn't really exactly fit the data, does it?
Man, all over the place.
Okay, now this one's quite amazing. This is again from Von Fang's book. This is a dinosaur bone excavated near Ely in England, showing apparently cut marks. That's what it looks like to me. Evolutionists cannot believe that this must have been a butchering site long ago. And the Victoria Institute, I don't think it was directly supported by Queen Victoria, but it was pro-Christian, pro-Bible, and I don't think it was strict creationist, but overall generally supporting the truth of Scripture, that you can trust that those events really happened in the history and Scripture overall. And then some of the articles in there actually did favor a young Earth, but in terms of supporting biblical inerrancy, they had articles like that. And nowadays, it has, I think, Faith and Reason might be the name they go by today. Now, who can make a guess what the color picture is? Anybody want to make a guess? And it's what it looks like. It's not really too much of a trick question. It's actually what it looks like. Maybe some of you outdoors men and outdoors ladies might know what this is.
It just looks like a fractured bone.
Warm, very warm. It is a bone. What kind of marks are on the bone? The color picture.
It looks like teeth, maybe.
Bingo. Very good. Yeah.
I knew it. I was going to say that.
What are the marks? What are the marks?
Teeth marks from a mammal. A mammal chewing on. Have you ever eaten dinosaur? I mean, come on, give it a try.
Only the Flintstones have.
Mammal teeth marks on a dinosaur bone.
No.
So what I'm doing is comparing the two. This sure looks like cut marks on a bone, and it's a dinosaur bone. Compare that to what real teeth marks look like. To me, it's like, rather than just throw out the evidence, these out-of-place artifacts, maybe investigate it some more, look into it, or maybe do some search in the same place where you found those. We can go to the next.
See, I'm like the total wrong guy to ask that question too, because I only eat processed meat from the store and never with bones in it. So
you're a boneless kind of guy, huh?
I totally am. Ground beef is good.
There you go.
No bones about it.
No bones about it.
There we go.
That's right. No, yeah, I don't pick any bones with anybody.
So this is really an interesting topic, and it's where the instead of the younger rocks being on top and the older rocks being on the bottom, it's flipped. And there's a lot of explanations to it. It's kind of a wild thing. So a lot of the early creationists would just bring up example after example after example. And I think it does carry some weight. There are a lot of them. In the Genesis Flood, Morrison Wickham, I think there's quite a few in there. So this example is called the Glarus overthrust. And how could older rocks move over younger rocks for a distance of over 100 kilometers or about 60 miles? J.G.C. Anderson describes the Glarus overthrust in the Swiss Alps, where older rocks are on top of younger rocks. Quote, the main contacts between the naps, that is the thrust sheets, are often remarkably smooth. For example, along the famous Glarus overthrust, Permian red beds overlie lower tertiary flysch, that is the shale conglomerate mix. The zone of disturbance being exceedingly thin, even on the order of 10 centimeters, roughly maybe about the width of your hand. So I don't see that to where that guy's pointing, and that is the Glarus overthrust. It almost looks like a knife edge as the question goes. And so there's two ways you can go with it. The dating method's completely wrong. That's one answer. Another answer is it did move, and the reason is because during the flood you have these rapid plate movements, extreme volcanism, and you have lots of water and possibly other lubricating things. Liquefied gas, I don't know, but you could come up with other things other than just the water. But with the heavy pressure water and with the idea that you have the rapid plate movements, a lot of catastrophic things going on, even large blocks of water could have possibly moved for 60 miles. But then if you're having catastrophism on that scale, hold on, what does that fit with? That fits with a global flood and a shorter time scale. So basically they're kind of tough deal if they lose and tough deal if they win. That doesn't quite make sense. And my history of science professor, I mentioned him before, I had extremely high regard for him, David Kitts. He studied with Dubzhansky and also the famous paleontologist G.G. Simpson. He was the first curator of OU's Natural Health Museum, and who's my history of science prof. In class, he admitted that the idea of these overthrusts, huge rocks going over large distance, was indeed a challenge to mainstream geology. He admitted that in class. Yeah.
I would assume that with all that water, you would have some kind of like a lot of mudsliding and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Water, which is there's lubricant right there.
That's correct. Exactly. Now, this is another way to argue it. Like, say, if there's certain evidences that fit the young Earth, then that brings into question the radiometric dating rather than looking specifically at the technicalities of the radiometric dating. So in my book, Is the Young Earth Possible? I have quite a bit of evidence for a young Earth, but I'm not specifically tackling the radiometric dating. That's in my earlier book, Yes, Young Earth Science. So this is Nathan Jensen, cell biology PhD from Harvard, and very good writer. It's a little deep, so in my links, there's something like 18 videos that kind of break it down if you'd rather watch videos. But basically, going back into the past, and of course, trying to trace humanity, their genetics back to Babylon, and then back to Noah, and then even to some extent, back to Adam and Eve. And you have to use the Y chromosome because that works with the father. So you have the list of these patriarchs, so we can match that to the table of nations. And after, Babylon, where all the different nations spread out. So what he's putting the timeline on is from generation to generation, you have mutations. And there are known ways, say we look at a historical person that died 100 years ago, and where we can, the degree that we can look at their genetics, you can get a sense of how fast these mutations are accumulating. So you can use that as a clock, even though it's not perfect. But when we do that, and then he matches it up to the biblical patriarchs in the genealogy we have in Scripture, it fits the biblical timeline, not the mainstream timeline. So I'm saying that if it's wrong on things we can kind of match up with history that we know, and even into the biblical history, then maybe the other dating methods that would give dates like 100,000 or 200,000 years, maybe those are way off, and we need to question those. So that's why I brought it.
Agreed.
Okay, so I thought I'd get fun here, and not that dinosaurs had a lot of bling bling, but in terms of some of the dates are as young, the radiocarbon dates are as young as 24,000 years, which is, of course, way too young, saying they died off 66 million years ago. Big difference.
Yeah.
So research results of radiocarbon dating of dinosaur fossils were presented at the Western Geophysics meeting in Singapore, which happened in August of 2012. A gathering of approximately 2,000 scientists. Several tests were done by the University of Georgia using accelerator mass spectrometry. It's hard to say. So anyway, that's where they basically dissolve kind of everything. And so you know exactly how much carbon-14 you have. It's a very, very exact method. And most of the specimens dated to less than 40,000 years. And some were dated as young as 24,000 years. And that's a link to more information on that. We can go to the next. Now, this is a challenge that I've given for years and years and years. It's fairly simple. We find radiocarbon in dinosaur bones, but maybe you don't have some dinosaur bones handy. However, no matter where you live in the United States, you can drive to where there's coal. Now, of course, the good coal is the anthracite. And if you remember what your great-great-grandpa said, they used to heat with coal. So coal used to be in your house. Or, you didn't Santa wasn't happy with you. You got coal in your stuff. So anyway, you have the anthracite, and then the medium, and then finally the lignite. It's still coal, but it's not as good. And in terms of using it for power, they have cleaner smokestacks that actually make it fairly environmental. So go to your nearest place where there's a coal mine or a coal source. Send it to your radiocarbon lab. Have it dated. I predict that the age will be less than 40,000 years. Again, that has been done, and it's happened over and over again. And it's something that theoretically, just about anybody could do if you had the money to pay the bill. We can go to the next. And you say, well, where's my proof? Where's your mainstream research? Well, there it is from 1989. Now, notice it says that they expected the date of this coal to be around 50,000 years. And a lot of them were in the 40 to 45,000 year range. And because of the method, it's extremely accurate, like I said. So the AMS there is at the end of the abstract. So that's what they're using, the most accurate method. And again, like I say, these creationists in 2012 had come up with even dates as young as 24,000. So do it yourself. That was for the dinosaurs. But go get some coal. And obviously, if it's in a bed that's supposedly 100 million years old and it comes up with a date of, let's just say 40,000, there's something wrong there. Something didn't jive. Or jibe. All right. In 1968, Don Eicher, who wrote Geologic Time, a Prentice Hall publication, not related, but definitely not a creationist publication, standard educational publisher, said this: virtually all scientists who have seriously investigated the technique of radiometric dating agree that it rests on a firm theoretical basis. Still, suspicions have persisted that because of some unanticipated source of systematic error, the whole radiometric calendar from bottom to top might be drastically wrong. So at least he had the honesty to admit that, and there's a few others from time to time that have. And again, often you find dates that are wildly different, and especially for the different methods. So it's an honest question to ask. We can go to the next. So this is the G.G. Simpson that I mentioned before, a famed paleontologist. And he said, it is a major operational importance that paleontology, that is the fossils, when applicable, has the highest resolving power of any method yet discovered for determining the sequence of strictly geological events. And this is his remark also in the parentheses. The radiometric dating methods give equal or greater resolution is at present a hope and not a fact. Now, he said that in the 60s, but as far as I know, when he died in 1984, he didn't refute that. And so that's why I gave two quotes basically saying the same thing. But there are a lot of confusing results when you look at radiometric dating. They go all over the map. And then these are the references. Do your own research, DYOR. Britannica, Encyclopedia Britannica on John Jolly. Again, he was one of the very, very earliest people that did radiometric dating. He threw out the method and suggested rapid radiometric decay. And then the results were censored, even though the people that attended heard it. And it's Willand, Carl Willand is a well-known creationist. He gets into that. And then this is something, I don't know if you've drawn mind maps, you kind of put a topic and then you draw arrows going out or lines going out, and then you put subtopics and then lines going out. It looks like a weird spider web, but it helps you to think through the topic. And then even though this is from a mainstream source, I'm extremely impressed. It's a complicated picture, but I'm extremely impressed by how they thought through it. It's just that I would give different interpretations on some things.
Interesting.
And then these are the videos for Trace, because it's quite a deep topic, but I do recommend the book, and these videos are helpful, or just watch the videos if you're not very bookish. And then the solar effects on the decay rates, you can get more references on that. So, and then the last slide. Yeah, my first two books both argue for the young Earth and give evidence from science and history. But the Yes, Young Earth Science, it's the one where I have a whole chapter. So my email's there, hallofmath@yahoo. Just shoot me an email and say, please send me the radiometric chapter. And I will send it 23 pages, 61 references. I'll send it to you for free. Thank you.
So I like that. Hall of Faith. Hall of Math. Excuse me. Hall of Math.
There you go.
hallofmath@yahoo.com. Hall of Math.
Yes.
All right. So that is that.
There you go. Back.
So again, what we're saying is let's look at the evidence, and what many don't seem to recognize is we really have the same sets of evidence, whether you're old Earth, evolutionist, young Earth, something else. We have the same sets of data, not data, but the same sets of evidence. The question is, how do we understand that evidence, and what does it tell us? And when we compare that with other kinds of questions, we may come up with different kinds of answers, as we're seeing here. If there's conflicts in the radiometric dating, why is that? Can it be trusted as the golden standard of evidence for timelines? Well, it seems not. That doesn't mean it's all inaccurate, but it means we need to be very guarded about it. Any other comments like that on that?
I think it's.
Yeah, I think
I know you think it's clear as mud. I get it.
Yeah, that's true.
any scientist will tell you that you need correlations of different methods of dating to have a strong case. If you're dependent on one thing, and we've looked at radiometric and definitely seen it has problems. So anybody who's dependent on one measure is in trouble. What you have to look for scientifically is correlations of data from different areas, and you don't really have a case until you can show that. So definitely, if people think that radiometric dating solves the question, they are deluded. Because that's not the way science works.
Yeah, we saw the numbers here. It's not really
well, and how many, and none of us sitting here could even begin to guess what that is. Even Jay, who's far more learned on this than I am, could say because they reject God, that is why they come to this conclusion. Now, for some, that is the case. But it's not all of them. They're just trying to sort out how can this have happened by a natural mechanism? And does the evidence that we all are using most demonstrable by the means I use to date things?
right.
Now, could they legitimately be trying to sort that out? What say you, Jay?
Yeah, a lot of times the motivations aren't clear or admitted. It's just that the foundations, you have Hutton seeming to have kind of an anti-biblical attitude, and then Lyell has a famous quote about trying to overthrow the Genesis account. So some of those early formational geologists definitely were in a sense quite biased and admitted their bias. But what you're taught in school, everything seems to fit. One layer correlates with another layer, and then the dating seems to match, and you go from the order of the fossils, which I think fits with how things were buried during the flood, and of course how some creatures could escape better, and things along these lines. But once you're taught that from a young age, it kind of seems like it's reasonable. But then if you go, that's why I'm saying that the people that are into history of science or philosophy of science, they seem to be more open to kind of questioning some things.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
True.
Right.
And you've probably never heard of Charles Lyell, but he's really important in the history. His book, Principles of Geology, was 1820. And that was really the point at which people started questioning the biblical account. Because Lyell didn't have it billions of years old yet, but he was basically saying that because of accretion, it took more time than the Bible allows for. And people wonder why in 1859 the origin of the species seemed like it flipped the world overnight. It's because doubt had already been sowed by earlier people. So Lyell, 1820 is a real turning point. That's when, from that point forward, people were no longer simply taking the Bible at face value without any question. The question had been raised. And so that prepared the way. So when the origin of the species came out, 40 years later, almost, and to us, looking back from the 21st century, it's like, how did that flip everything so quickly? Because the evidence, it convinced some people, it didn't convince people, but the consensus in the scientific community really did shift because the way was prepared. So remember that name. Charles Lyell is important in the history of this.
Yeah.
Principles of Geology, 1820, paves the way for the origin of the species in 1859.
Right.
Makes sense.
Right. All right. Well, with that, yes. Anybody else?
No, I think I was very happy with the presentation.
Thank you. I do have one thing.
Yes.
Okay. I noticed that it's got something here.
On your
right there.
Let's put him back on here.
Yeah.
I'm trying to move them over here.
All right.
What am I trying to get now?
Trying to save the planet.
Oh,
Yeah, that's
the
right.
sign. The
So
sign.
together we can save the planet. Just make sure it's a young planet.
There it is.
Right there. That was
And
it.
I think one important thing tonight is be careful how you treat your opponents.
Yes.
But one of the things I appreciate about Jay, he thinks that the consensus dating is wrong. He thinks these guys are wrong, but he's not up here telling you that they're all a bunch of liars. Like that one guy that put the little thing on the scroll there about Christians. We should be better than that, and most of us are. And I appreciate the fact that Jay is setting us a good example at that point.
Absolutely. There is a way to do it nicely.
Because we've seen the two extremes tonight.
That's true.
Right. And I think with the individual you're mentioning here, he put out a different question, but our friends, the Colorado Caffeinated Crew, I thought they had an interesting response. Love your name, Ad Stupidity Index, again, ad hominem. Interesting take on the origins of Christianity. What sparked your curiosity into the topic of your video suggestion? So that's a good response. It's not making accusations. It's just asking a question. And looking at Joseph Atwell, I could probably respond to that. I won't, but one of the main differences is he's looking back from today back into the past and making assumptions to build a case that I would suggest isn't accurate. We have better data closer to the time from eyewitnesses of some of the authors that validate what we believe about the New Testament articles. So again, it's back to evidence. It's not making any kind of determination on motives. It's just a question of the evidence you have and how do you understand it and interpret it. That has a lot to do with it.
Right.
So.
What makes the better sense overall? Overall, what makes where does it fall and what makes better sense? That's basically all we do.
And so next week we're doing, I didn't look it up. What are we doing next week?
So the Genesis kinds, which I like to relate to biological essentialism, which is the title of my other book. But basically the Genesis kinds, how do we determine them? You know, how many there are. Of course, that relates to the animals on the ark, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the exact opposite of evolution.
Right.
True.
All right. With that, we're going to sign off for tonight.